A very tall son named Barron. Has anyone ever heard of him?
Well, the internet is going wild after years in the spotlight, hearing Barron Trump's voice.
The spotlight has shifted to an unexpected figure, Ivanka's younger brother, Barron Trump.
Barron Trump, long known as the quiet and careful member of his high-profile family, has recently made waves in a way no one expected while Donald Trump plans his next government moves, and the rest of the family stays in the spotlight. Barron has been quietly working out his own path as a college student buried in books. He seems focused on his studies. But is there more to his story? For years, Barron stayed in the background, allowing his brothers to dominate the headlines. Now something feels different. Is this the beginning of a new chapter for the youngest Trump? Or just a passing moment of interest? One thing is certain, the world is watching and everyone is asking what's next for Barron Trump. Unlike his brothers, who have been front and center in their father's politics and business endeavors, Barron has always been in mystery, while Donald Trump Jr., Eric, Ivanka, and even Tiffany have taken on public jobs, whether in the Trump Organization, at political meetings, or as White House. Advisors, Barron has stayed largely out of sight. His departure from major events and refusal to engage in the family's public activities have only fueled speculation. Why has he picked such a different road? Is it a personal decision? Or is there a more deliberate effort to shield him from the pressures of fame? Much of Barron's low profile can be linked to his mother, Melania Trump. Known for a highly private nature, Melania has always valued her son's well-being above all else, even during her time as First Lady. She, avoiding the political limelight, focusing instead on building a stable and normal upbringing. For Barron, sources have noted that Melania is deeply protective, sure that her son isn't used as a political prop or exposed to needless scrutiny. This safety instinct was evident in several high-profile incidents. When star Peter Fonda made an offensive joke about Barron during Donald Trump's presidency, Melania didn't hesitate to engage the Secret Service. Similarly, when Stanford law professor Pamela Karlan laughed about Barron's name during the impeachment trial, Melania publicly condemned the comments, emphasizing that children should be kept out of politics, these times under, for her unwavering commitment to safeguarding her son's safety. Another key impact in Barron's life has been his grandparents, who live at the Trump family's Mar-a-Lago land. Melania's parents, particularly her mother, have played a major role in his childhood, providing a sense of normalcy amidst the confusion of the Trump world. Sources close to the family describe Melania as fully committed to Barron, ensuring he grows up in a safe and loving setting. As Barron steps into adulthood, the question on everyone's mind is what's next for the youngest Trump. Will he continue to accept a life of privacy, or will he finally step into the world? I, like his brothers, only time will tell. But one thing is clear, Barron Trump is no longer just a quiet kid in the background. He's becoming a figure of mystery. In his own right, Barron Trump breaking the quiet. Barron Trump's guarded nature has often been mistaken for mere shyness, but those close to him think it reflects a deeper sense of independence, unlike his siblings, who seem to easily embrace the fame and power associated with the Trump name. Barron has shown little interest in stepping into the spotlight. Whether this is a short phase where a long-term choice remains to be seen. However, as he grows older, the world continues to watch, thinking if and when he'll decide to step out from the dark and redefine his place within the Trump dynasty. Turning 18 is an important milestone for anyone, but for Barron Trump, it was a moment that changed everything. For years, he had been a quiet figure in one of the most talked about families in the world, a position in the background while his father, Donald Trump, dominated news. But stepping into adulthood came with new expectations, new pressures, and an important decision: who would he be now? That the world saw him as his own person. Growing up as the youngest, Trump meant living under a microscope. Every public appearance, every moment of silence, every rare smile or glance sparked endless debate. Unlike his bigger brothers, Donald Trump, Jr., Eric Trump, and Ivanka Trump, Barron never took center stage. His brothers and sister accepted the family name, diving headfirst into their father's business empire and political success. They made speeches at conventions, fight for their father, and became high-profile figures in their own right. Even Tiffany Trump, his half-sister from Donald's marriage to Mara Maples, had stepped into the spotlight on occasion, but Barron, he stayed an enigma while his siblings built jobs under the Trump brand. Barron stayed out of the fray, seemingly uninterested. in the fame and power that came with his last name. But turning May 18th have changed everything. Suddenly, he wasn't just the youngest Trump anymore. He was officially an adult with the ability to make choices about his own life, work and public, persona, and with that newfound independence came a question that had loomed over him for years. Would he follow in his family's ways, or chart a different course entirely? The demand didn't just come from within the family. It came from the world. Outside too, politics moves fast, and the Trump name stays one of the most polarizing in recent history. Whether you wanted to or not, Barron was now stepping into a world that had already formed thoughts about him before he'd even spoken a word. Did he feel the need to take a stand on something to fix the narrative to step into the political arena like his father and uncles? Or was this about something deeper, an inner realization that it was time to stop being the silent observer and start describing himself on his own terms? Looking back, the signs of change were there over the past year. Barron had started making more public appearances. Though he still wasn't vocal, his presence spoke words he carried himself with a greater confidence, standing taller, looking more assured. Small times, his body language, his interactions, the way he handled the cams, suggested that the one shy teenager was stepping into himself. It wasn't just about growing up, it was about change. And then finally, the moment came after years of watching, listening, and staying in the background. Barron made the choice to step forward. The years of silence had led to this point, a turning point, not just in his life, but in the way the world would see him from now on. He had spent his entire childhood under the weight of a name that carried enormous effect, hopes, and controversy, but now he had something else, a voice, and the choice of how to use it was entirely his. For Barron Trump, this wasn't just about breaking a silence. It was about reclaiming his story, stepping out of the shadows and finding out his place in a world that had for so long expected him to stay quiet. Now all eyes are on him, not because of his last Barron Trump, the shocking revelation. The question lingers in the air. What will Barron Trump do next? His answer, though brief, was nothing short of seismic after years of silence. His words carried a weight that caught everyone off guard. He didn't speak in riddles or vague sentences. There were no cryptic signs or carefully crafted phrases meant to be examined and overanalyzed. His message was direct, sharp, and hard to ignore. But it wasn't just what he said that sent shockwaves. It was how he said it. The response was quick. Within moments, his words were everywhere. News outlets scrambled to study every word, each one trying to outdo the other in understanding the true meaning behind a statement. Social media exploded with discussions swinging between admiration and open disbelief. Some saw it as a declaration of freedom the moment Barron Trump finally stepped out of his father's huge shadow. Others viewed it as something more powerful, a break from the Trump family's long-established customs and loyalties, regardless of interpretation. One thing was clear: Barron's voice was no longer just a quiet mutter in the background. It had become a focal point, asking an important question: was this simply a young man finding his voice, or was this an outright act of defiance? The time of his speech made it all the more important. Turning 18 had already marked a big turning point in Barron's life, giving him a newfound level of liberty and duty. But the way he chose his words, the planned nature of his statement, hinted at something deeper. It wasn't just a message to the world. It felt personal, as if the message wasn't just meant for the public, but for his own family. Then in a moment that seemed almost cinematic, the world got another rare glimpse of Barron. In December 2024, during the documentary series Art of the Rush, his voice was publicly heard for the first time. The clip was short, just 17 seconds, but the effect was obvious in it. Barron greeted a woman and shook hands with UFC founder Dana White. On election night, his father Donald Trump joked about turning Barron into a fighter in answer. Barron let out a brief laugh and made a dismissive motion. The moment was small, yet it carried an unexpected resonance for years folks had speculated about. Barron Trump, his views, his ambitions, and how he truly saw the world. And now, in just a few words, he had answered them all while causing even more questions. Who was the real Barron Trump? Had he been silently watching the political chaos of his family, all these years forming his own views behind the scenes? And perhaps most importantly, was this just the beginning? Speaking of family, how did the Trumps react openly? They didn't. There were no official replies, no tweets, no carefully worded comments. Trying to control the narrative, just an eerie silence that only fueled the theory behind closed doors. However, it was impossible to imagine that things were just business as usual, where his older brothers impressed or furious did his father see it as an act of rebellion, or was he privately proud? The Trump family, known for their bold personalities and public fights, now found themselves in unfamiliar area where the quietest member had suddenly become the loudest, and then came the media. Frenzy Barron's remark became top news for days. Political analysts, body language experts, and journalists all studied his words, his tone. Even the breaks between his sentences was this: a defining moment in the Trump legacy was the balance of power. Changing within the family, every audio news panel and social media figure had an opinion. Barron Trump, once just a witness in his high-stakes world, was suddenly the subject of global discussion. His appearance at a July 2024 rally in Doral, Florida, had already hinted at his growing job that day. He had made his political start when his father introduced him to the crowd. Though he didn't speak, his mere presence signaled a shift. The world was beginning to see Barron not just as the youngest, Trump, but as a young man moving into his own, the quiet observer. When Donald Trump introduced Barron to the crowd at a July 2024 protest in Doral, Florida, the youngest Trump stood, waved, and gave a thumbs up. It was a simple act, but one that set the internet ablaze. And now, with his brief words in Art of the Wave, he had gone a step further. He had finally spoken what comes next for Barron Trump. Remains the question, will he continue moving into the limelight, embracing the political legacy of his family, or was this moment just an anomaly, a brief glimpse before he retreats into the privacy? He has always seemed to prefer no one can say for sure, but one thing is certain: the world is watching, and for the first time, Barron Trump has given them something to talk about. Barron's secret life growing up as the youngest member of the Trump family was anything but average for Barron Trump from the time he was born. He was surrounded by huge wealth, relentless media scrutiny, and a political storm that most children could never understand. But while his siblings embraced the spotlight, becoming public people, business leaders, and political leaders, Barron took an entirely different path. He remained on the sidelines, his silence acting as a shield between himself and the chaos that constantly surrounded his family. From an early age, it was clear that Barron had no desire to be the center of attention, unlike his brothers, who thrived in front of cameras, giving interviews and keeping a strong footprint on social media. Barron preferred to stay in the background. He was rarely seen speaking at public events, and when he did make a showing alongside his folks, his expression stayed calm and reserved. This lack of exposure only made him more intriguing to the people, while the media dissected every move his family made. Barron's silence created an air of secret that set him apart. The pressure of the Trump name, growing up as a Trump mint, facing great pressure alongside privilege. The Trump name carried expectations, scrutiny, and an unwanted level of care. But Barron wasn't just navigating school and the normal teenage problems. He was doing all with the eyes of the world, watching every move, every rare public moment was studied. It's no wonder that he chose to stay out of the limelight in a world where uncertainty was the norm. His quiet nature might have been his way of keeping some sense of stability. The difference between Barron and his brothers only made his reserved nature more obvious. Donald Jr. and Eric were deeply involved in the family business and frequently made news for their open political views. Ivanka, an important figure in both politics and dress, was often at the forefront of major events, actively supporting her father. Even Tiffany, who kept a relatively low profile, still participated in campaigns and media appearances. Yet as his brothers became increasingly visible, Barron seemed to fade into the background, his absence from the public. I made his quiet personality stand out even more. The power of silence can change a person. In many ways, it'd be a source of strength or a heavy load for Barron. His years of staying out of the public, I likely gave him time to reflect, process, and observe from a distance. He had the rare chance to see his family's world unfold without being directly involved in it. This view may have allowed him to form his own views and gain clarity on his place within the Trump dynasty, but at the same time, his solitude may have come with problems. Did his decision to stay silent make him feel solitary, even when within his own family? Now, as Barron begins to step forward, the world is finally starting to grasp the depth of his quiet nature. His silence wasn't just a mental trait, it was a defining part of his life. In a family known for its loud, unfiltered views, Barron chose to carve his own path, not with words, but with years of quiet study, and as he now begins to speak, the question remains: will his voice echo louder because of the silence that preceded it? This moment in Barron Trump's life was more than just a personal milestone. It was a turning point for the entire Trump family, a seismic shift. Barron Trump's remark was more than just a few words. It was a major shift within the Trump family, sending shockwaves through both the public and private areas. His words, once released into the world, didn't merely make headlines. They disrupted the neatly constructed dynamic that had long defined the Trump family. What had previously been an unchallenged hierarchy now faced an unusual twist, with Barron stepping into a job that no one had anticipated for years. Barron had remained on the sidelines, a quiet presence amid a family. Known for its boldness and public power, unlike his siblings Ivanka, Donald Jr., and Eric, who were interested in politics and business, he had stayed an enigma, the youngest. Trump rarely made statements, never waded into conflicts, and avoided the media's grasp, but all of that changed in an instant. The question that lingered in the air wasn't just about what Barron had said, but why was this a long brewing drive to assert his own identity, a quiet rebellion, or had something behind the scenes pushed him into the spotlight? The effect on Donald Trump, the effect of his remarks on his father. Donald Trump was definitely profound. The past president had always kept tight control over his public image, carefully arranging the narrative surrounding both himself and his family. The Trump name was built on strength, unity, and unwavering love for Barron to step out of the dark and deliver a message of his own. Especially at such a key moment, could be seen as a challenge to that power. Would Donald Trump view this as an act of defiance or a normal evolution of his son's independence? Would he embrace Barron's voice or seek to rein it in before it changed too much? His brother's reactions could be just as saying. Donald Jr. and Eric, longtime supporters of their father's vision, had spent years strengthening the Trump picture. Ivanka, with her polished diplomacy and power, had always been a calming force in the family. Now, with Barron moving forward, they faced an internal shift. Would they see him as a new voice to be included, or as an unpredictable force that could disrupt the status quo? Would they rally behind him, or would this moment create unseen fissures in their relationships? The Trump legacy. Beyond the family itself, the Trump name carries great weight in the public space. From business ventures to political ambitions, their influence goes far beyond personal matters. For decades, their success has relied on a united front, whether in times of prosperity or conflict. But with Barron coming into the talk, the family's public image might be at risk of shifting. Could his emergence rethink how the Trump legacy is viewed? Would it strengthen their influence, bringing a fresh perspective, or weaken it by showing internal changes? One thing is certain, this moment cannot be ignored. Barron Trump, the family's most silent member, has spoken, and the world is listening. What happens next remains unknown, but one question stays: is this the beginning of a new chapter for the Trump family, or the moment everything changes? New beginnings for years. Barron has been seen but rarely heard. He's often described as private, reserved, and even somewhat of a mystery within the Trump family growing. Up in the White House during some of the most politically charged years in recent history, he was protected from a media in ways his father and his brothers never were. His attendance at events was minimal, and when he did appear, he stayed silent, leaving the people to wonder about his thoughts, ambitions, and future. But now that silence has been broken, and what's most interesting is that he didn't just say something, he said something that meant his words carried weight enough to make people sit up and take notice. That alone says one important thing. Barron Trump is ready to define himself beyond just being Donald Trump's youngest son. So what does this mean? Is he slowly stepping into the public eye, prepared for a future where he takes on a more active role? Or was this a one-time moment, a brief glimpse into the thoughts of a young man who has spent years watching from the shadows? Barron Trump, a new chapter, is Barron Trump's latest statement, a one-time occurrence, a rare glimpse into his personality before he retreats into private again for now. There are more questions than answers. Does he have any real interest in politics like his father, or is he hoping to completely distance himself from that world? Maybe he'll go the way of other political children who chose quieter lives far removed from the family name's legacy, or perhaps this is just the start of something bigger, an early signal that Barron has thoughts and ideas he's finally ready to share. What's interesting is that Barron's case is completely unique. Despite coming from one of the most talked about groups in America, he's been given something that his father and older brothers never really had the ability to choose, while Donald Jr., Ivanka, and Eric were involved in their father's business and political endeavors. From an early age, Barron has been left largely untouched by that world, at least openly. That means he has the freedom to forge his own way in a way that no other Trump has before, but will he take advantage of that freedom, or will he eventually get pulled into the orbit of Trump's massive effect, just like the rest of his family, a reflection of a bigger trend? Beyond Barron himself, his choice to speak out actually reflects a much bigger trend happening among younger generations today. More and more young people are pushing back against the standards placed on them by their families, society, and the media. They don't want to be defined by their last names or forced into jobs they never asked for. Instead, they want to carve out identities that feel real to them. Barron's bravery, his readiness to say something in a way we've never really seen before, might just be a sign that he's thinking along those lines. Mine too. Maybe he's not interested in following the Trump playbook. Maybe he wants to write his own story. It's an interesting shift, especially considering how many people assume Barron would just quietly follow in his father's footsteps. But what if he doesn't? What if instead of politics or business, he picks a completely unexpected path? Imagine if he went into entertainment, sports charity, or even something artistic. How would the public react? How would his family? The options are endless. And that's exactly what makes this moment so interesting. The internet's reaction naturally, the internet is buzzing with theories. Some people think this is just a passing moment, a blip on the radar before Barron disappears from the public eye again. Others believe this could be the start of something much bigger, that he's finally stepping forward and claiming a part in the Trump family legacy, no matter what happens next. One thing is certain, this won't be the last time people talk about Barron Trump. Whether he steps up and takes on a more public job or chooses to stay in the background, his name will always carry a certain level of wonder and intrigue.